Europe's world's worst refugee crisis is up for discussion.
Oraya gitmiyoruz. Ankara'ya, Adana'ya, diğer tarafa gitmiyoruz.
As Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro blames it on what he calls unjust wars of aggression.
Biz insanız. Biz Suriyeliyiz. İnsanız. Hayvan değiliz. Hayvan değiliz.
I don't want to get back. I get so many far away. I don't want to get back. I want to pass.
Europe is contending with a refugee crisis with an estimated 1 million people expected to seek asylum in Europe this year as they escape from war-torn countries in the Middle East and North Africa.
The myth prevails that Europe is the only rich place on earth. This is not true. There are other places comparable to us in terms of wealth, but for some reason, refugees and migrants are not flowing there. This is because wealth is not the only element that determines where people choose the future of their children. Such values like tolerance, openness, respect for diversity, freedom, human rights, and the Geneva Convention are also a magnet attracting them to us. And we refuse to change in these respects. By contrast, many countries represented here deal with this problem in a much more simple way, namely by not allowing migrants and refugees to enter their territories at all. This is why suggesting that Europe is an example of poor treatment or indifference towards asylum seekers is sheer hypocrisy.
The world is now facing a big new challenge: human trafficking. This is an old evil taking an altogether new and dangerous dimension, threatening to upset international relationships. We in Africa are grieved to see on international networks how hundreds of thousands of able-bodied men and women fleeing to Europe, and in the process thousands dying in the desert or drowning in the Mediterranean. We condemn in the strongest terms these people traffickers and will support any measures to apprehend and bring them to justice.
And speaking in the same vein, the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, calls on developed nations to follow Britain's example and deliver on aid pledges while highlighting corruption, among other things, as a key cause of poverty in the world.
If we're serious about eliminating extreme poverty, we have to tackle these challenges head-on. That means intensifying our focus on economic growth and ensuring it is sustainable and broad-based. It means working to create opportunities and safety nets for vulnerable people. It means preventing dangerous climate change and protecting our one and only planet. And above all, it means giving everyone power and voice so they can stand up for their rights.
La Asamblea escuchará ahora el discurso del excelentísimo señor Muhammadu Buhari, presidente de la República Federal de Nigeria. Pido al oficial de protocolo que acompañe a su excelencia.
For Nigeria's President, Muhammadu Buhari, the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast has affected sustainable development in West Africa region. He condemns the act and gives assurances of flushing them out while ensuring the over 200 girls abducted by the sect in Borno are rescued.
Peace, Mr. President, is close to the hearts of Nigerians, as we are in the front line in the war on terror. Boko Haram's war against the people of Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon may not attract as much worldwide attention as the wars in the Middle East, but the suffering is just as great and the human cost is equally high. This is a war about values, between progress and chaos, between democracy and the rule of law. Boko Haram celebrates violence against the weak and the innocent, and deplorably, they hide behind their perverted interpretation of Islam. Boko Haram is as far away from Islam as anyone can think of. Many of my colleagues attending this forum would want to know how our new government intends to tackle the huge problem the government has inherited. Friends of Nigeria and foreign investor partners will be encouraged to know that the new government is attacking the problems we inherited head-on. We intend to tackle inequalities arising from massive unemployment and previous government policies favoring a few people to the detriment of the many. We intend to emphasize quality technological education for development and lay foundation for comprehensive care of the aged, the disadvantaged, and the infirm. But for now, terrorism is the immediate problem. Accordingly, Mr. President, members of the General Assembly, the new Nigerian government, which I have the honor to head, moved with dispatch to put in a bold and robust strategy to defeat Boko Haram. Nigeria and her neighbors, Cameroon, Chad, Niger plus Benin, are working together to face this common threat within the regional framework of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. We have established a multinational joint task force to confront, degrade, and defeat Boko Haram. We have driven them away from many of their strongholds, killed or captured many of their operatives or commanders, and freed several hundred of hostages. Mr. President, one of our major aims is to rescue the Chibok girls alive and unharmed.
The Assembly, on behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank President. I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
French President François Hollande makes a promise on an additional 4 billion euros in public aid for development in poor countries from 2020. He says he had also decided to reform France's public aid agency to link it with a big local financial group to create Europe's largest development bank.
The annual funding of France.
The General Assembly takes a look at the issue of climate change and its negative impact. The UN chief expresses hope that the upcoming conference on the issue, which will take place in Paris in December, will result in a robust agreement. After the adoption of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, new initiatives on implementation are announced to include ending poverty, ending hunger, global strategy for women, children and adolescents' health, quality education, gender equality, and the environment.
The UN Charter, embodied through its principles and objectives, the aspirations of the oppressed people worldwide. We would also like to acknowledge the role of the UN General Assembly in the past 70 years, rooted in the principle of sovereign quality, UNGA, is the most representative international institution and organ of the United Nations. The General Assembly has over the years remained central to the provision of support to the disadvantaged, marginalized, occupied, colonized, and oppressed peoples of the world.
While the world has drastically changed since 1945, the United Nations and indeed the global governance architecture remains mired in a long bygone era. This archaic hierarchy among nations threatens to erode the confidence and support that the United Nations commands among the majority, but disadvantaged of its membership. We are not gays. Cooperation and respect for each other will advance the cause of human rights worldwide. Confrontation, vilification, and double standards will not.
I thank the Secretary General for his statement, and on behalf of the General Assembly, I once again wholeheartedly welcome His Holiness Pope Francis to this hall, and I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Pope Francis makes his way to the General Assembly, where he demands justice for the weak. He affirms the rights of the environment must not be treated with kid gloves.
In all religions, the environment is a fundamental good. The misuse and destruction of the environment are also accompanied by a relentless process of exclusion. In effect, a selfish and boundless thirst for power and material prosperity leads both to the misuse of available natural resources and to the exclusion of the weak. And the disadvantaged, either because they are differently abled, handicapped, or because they lack adequate information and technical expertise, or are incapable of decisive political action. Economic and social exclusion is a complete denial of human fraternity and a very grave offense against human rights and the environment.
And to the prosperity of the whole world and to the United Nations, and which is in its 70th year is as vital as necessary ever. Thank you very much. Cheers to the United Nations.
Guys.